In the year 2009, in the depths of the suffocating Sarajan coal mine in Colombia, a team of paleontologists was excavating a lost world. They were uncovering the remains of a rainforest that existed 60 million years ago, just after the end of the age of dinosaurs. Amidst fossilized leaves and trunks, something they unearthed paralyzed them. It was a single vertebra, but it was gigantic, thicker than an adult man's wrist. The first explanation seemed obvious. Upon finding such large bones in rocks from that era, there was only one logical conclusion: a crocodile. In that ancient world, crocodilians were the kings, the apex, predators. The image of a bus-sized reptile was already hard to believe, but it fit with what they knew about the planet's past. However, there was a problem that defied all logic. The shape of that bone was wrong. Its curves and angles didn't match any known crocodile vertebra. The evidence was right there in their hands, contradicting decades of scientific knowledge. Logic dictated that only a giant crocodile could have a bone that size. But the anatomy proved they were wrong. So if the known king of that swamp wasn't the owner of that bone, what was it? The answer, when it came, defied everything known about the limits of life. Those were not the vertebrae of a crocodile. They were from a serpent, and not just any serpent. The scientists christened it with a name that echoed its power: Titanoboa. The site of the discovery, Sarajan, was not just a coal pit. It was a perfect photograph of a lost world. An entire tropical forest, buried by a landslide of mud and ash 60 million years ago, was preserved in stunning detail. Leaves with their veins intact, fish with their scales still visible, the shells of giant turtles. It was a complete ecosystem, frozen in time. And in the midst of that mud, the remains of the largest serpent science had ever seen. As the excavation progressed, more bones emerged, dozens of vertebrae, ribs curved like the arches of a ship. With each new piece, the truth became heavier and more undeniable. This was not a single abnormal individual, a freak of nature. It was a pattern. The fossils were consistent, and they all pointed to an animal of proportions that bordered on fantasy. What emerged from the rock was the portrait of a creature that, on its own, rewrote the limits of what was biologically possible for a serpent. Back in the laboratory, the reality of the numbers began to set in. The researchers, in disbelief, redid the calculations. Once, twice, 10 times. They checked the formulas, questioned the methods, but the answer remained the same. The measurements pointed to a serpent more than 15 meters long, with an estimated weight of over 1,100 kilograms. If these numbers were correct, Titanoboa was not just a giant snake. It was the largest terrestrial predator on the planet after the extinction of the dinosaurs. The throne was not empty. It had a new occupant. But how could they look at fragments of bone and reconstruct, with such frightening precision, the dimensions of a monster that no one had ever seen? The science behind this deduction is, at the same time, elegant and brutally simple. Modern snakes obey very predictable scaling laws. There is a direct mathematical relationship between the size of their vertebrae and the total length of their body. It's like looking at the foundation of a demolished building and knowing exactly how many floors it had. Paleontologists measured the bones of the Titanoboa and compared them with those of its living relatives, the boa constrictors and anacondas, to calculate its actual size. To put it in perspective, let's think about the largest snake alive today, the anaconda. A giant specimen can reach 8.5 meters in length and weigh around 227 kilograms. It is a colossal animal, a true titan of the South American rivers. Now, imagine the Titanoboa next to it. With its more than 15 meters in length and a weight that exceeded 1,100 kilograms, It would make the world's largest anaconda look like an ordinary creature. It wasn't just bigger, it was a predator in a completely different category. Imagine for a moment encountering a creature like that in a river today. What would be your first reaction? Paralyzing fear or overwhelming fascination? Leave your answer in the comments below. I really want to know what's on your mind. Stories like this connect us to a past that challenges our imagination, and this is just one of them. To continue this journey and uncover other secrets of our planet, there is a path. Only the chosen ones will find and click the red button to subscribe. Science explained the how, but this opened the door to a much deeper and more disturbing question. Why did the Titanoboa reach a size that no snake today can even dream of? What was so different about Earth's past? The answer to this mystery is not in its bones, but in the air it breathed, in the water it swam in, and in the relentless heat of the planet that created it. To understand Titanoboa, you must first understand its world. 60 million years ago, Earth was a place we would barely recognize. Global temperatures were drastically higher. In the region that is now Colombia, the average annual temperature was at least 32 degrees Celsius, and there were almost no seasons. Imagine a tropical forest that never has a moment of relief, where the night does not bring the expected coolness. A world where the air was heavy, dense, saturated with humidity and heat. There were no polar ice caps, no winters. It was a greenhouse planet with a relentless heat that stretched from one pole to the other. The key to Titanoboa's gigantism lies in a fundamental characteristic of reptiles. They are ectothermic. Unlike us, they do not generate their own body heat. Their energy, their metabolism, everything depends on the temperature of the environment. The external heat was the fuel that powered its internal engine. In a warmer world, a snake's metabolism accelerates drastically. This means it could digest food faster, convert energy into body mass more efficiently, and most importantly, continue growing at rates that would be impossible today. Each bone of Titanoboa is therefore more than a fossil. It is a biological thermometer, a climatic record etched in calcium. The mere existence of a snake of this size is irrefutable proof that its world was extraordinarily hot. It was not an anomaly. It was a direct and inevitable consequence of its environment. But what would it really be like to live on a planet like that? A world without winter, where the heat never relents, and cold-blooded life has no brakes on its growth. The tropical forests we know today, like the Amazon or the Congo, would be too cold for it. Today's anacondas and pythons already live at the limit of what our climate allows. To cross this barrier and enter Titanoboa's territory, a consistently warmer planet would be necessary for millions of years. Titanoboa's massive body needed that heat to function, to pump blood through more than 15 meters of muscle. The planet's extreme temperature was what made its size possible. But what made it the supreme predator was the specific environment in which it evolved, an aquatic labyrinth that it learned to master like no other being. To the Titanoboa, today's Amazon rainforest would be an icy desert. Its world, revealed in detail by the rock layers in Sarajan, was a humid, super-productive furnace. The fossils found alongside its bones were not of ordinary prey. They were of other giants, turtles with shells as wide as a dining table, true floating fortresses, primitive relatives of crocodiles with jaws different from the ones we know. Their teeth were not pointed for piercing, but thick and blunt, designed like jackhammers to crush the shells of those turtles. This was not a river of clear waters and fast currents. It was a swampy forest, a suffocating labyrinth of water and vegetation. The water, stained by the tannins of decomposing plants, was the color of dark tea, and visibility was measured in centimeters, not meters. The sound was a constant, oppressive hum of insects muffled by the incessant noise of rain falling on leaves the size of shields. It was a world where sight was almost useless, and silence did not exist. In this claustrophobic environment, gigantism became the ultimate weapon. On land, a body of over 1,100 kilograms would be a burden, a constant struggle against gravity. But in the water, that weight disappeared. Buoyancy transformed the heavy monster into a silent ghost. The water not only hid its body, it supported it, allowing the Titanoboa to wait for days, perhaps weeks, with minimal energy expenditure, while the relentless heat of the environment kept its muscles always ready for action. The Titanoboa, therefore, was not an accident of nature. It was the logical consequence of a world taken to the extreme, a predator perfectly designed for its time and place. But knowing where it hunted is only half the story. The real question is, what was the final attack of the greatest predator that has ever existed on Earth? Forget the image of a movie monster, a furious serpent chasing prey through the jungle. The reality of the Titanoboa was much more terrifying. On land, it was clumsy, almost vulnerable. More than 15 meters of muscle and bone, weighing over a ton, does not glide with agility. Every movement was an exhausting battle against its own mass, a struggle against gravity that left it slow and exposed. But in the water, physics changed the rules. The crushing weight transformed into neutral buoyancy. The heavy monster became a specter. In the Paleocene swamps, the Titanoboa didn't hunt like a snake, but like a crocodile. Its strategy was not pursuit, but infinite patience. Half submerged, perfectly still, it could wait for hours, perhaps days, with only its eyes above the dark surface. A predator that blended completely into its environment. And when the moment came, the calm of the swamp was shattered by an explosion of pure violence. The force of its attack was unimaginable. Biomechanical models estimate that the Titanoboa could exert a constricting pressure of more than 400 pounds per square inch. It's not just a number. It is the force required to crush the ribs of a crocodile as if they were twigs, or to turn the shell of a giant turtle into fragments. Modern snakes kill by cutting off their prey's blood flow. The Titanoboa simply crushed the life out of everything it touched. The water was more than its hunting ground. It was its source of life. Buoyancy was the only thing that relieved the crushing pressure of its own body on its internal organs. On land, it was a prisoner of its own mass. In the water, it was a queen on its throne, a supreme predator, perfectly adapted with no known rivals, a force of nature that seemed destined to reign forever. So why isn't it here today? What could erase from existence a creature that seemed absolutely invincible? The fall of Titanoboa did not come with the roar of a stronger predator or the devastation of a disease. Its end was silent, slow, and inevitable. The killer was the planet itself. After the era of extreme heat of the Paleocene, the Earth began to cool. The change was gradual, a drop of just a few degrees Celsius in the global average temperature over millions of years. For us, this change would be subtle. For a cold-blooded giant, it was a death sentence. The heat that once supercharged its metabolism now became scarce. Its internal engine, which operated at high performance, began to slow down. Digestion, which needed to be fast to process enormous prey, became a slow and inefficient process. Its movements, once explosive in the water, became lethargic. Titanoboa, the supreme predator, began to starve in slow motion, unable to hunt with the efficiency needed to sustain its colossal mass. And it was not just the cold. The entire world around it was unraveling. The lush swamps that were its domain began to dry up. The rivers changed course. The food web that sustained it, the giant turtles and primitive crocodiles, was also collapsing, victims of the same climate change that weakened it. The ecosystem that created it was disappearing, and it was disappearing along with it. The largest snake that ever existed was not hunted to extinction. It was not overcome by a smarter competitor. It was simply discontinued. The planet that forged it in its extreme heat abandoned it in its growing cold. The creature that seemed the very definition of power was, in fact, the most fragile of all, chained to a climate that would not last forever. And the story of its rise and fall is not just about the past. It is a warning. The Titanoboa was not an accident of nature, nor a monster out of fiction. She was the logical and inevitable response of a planet pushed to its extreme. For a brief and glorious moment in Earth's history, the heat, water, and abundance of life aligned perfectly to forge a predator of mythical proportions. And for millions of years, the largest snake that ever existed reigned supreme in the warm swamps of ancient Colombia. And then, as silently as she appeared, she vanished. There was no final battle, no cataclysm that swept her from existence. The same specialization that made her an invincible queen became her prison. Her gigantic body was a furnace that demanded the constant fuel of an overheated world. When the planet's thermostat dropped by just a few degrees, her internal flame began to fade, leaving behind only bones and questions. Her legacy, therefore, is a warning etched in stone. Climate doesn't just shape ecosystems, it dictates the fundamental rules of what is possible for life. The Titanoboa is the ghost of a lost world, the silent proof that even the most overwhelming power can be undone by the subtlest of changes. She teaches us that a planet's strength lies not only in its ability to create giants, but in its ease in erasing them. The story of Titanoboa is an echo of a distant past. But what does it tell us about our present? Does knowing that a change of just a few degrees was enough to extinguish Earth's greatest predator change the way you see our own world? I'd really like to know your opinion. Exploring these lost worlds and bringing these stories to life is the reason I do this. If this journey through time resonated with you, please consider leaving a like so that more people can discover it. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next explorations. And share your thoughts in the comments, even if anonymously. Every interaction is what allows us to continue. For in the silence of the rock, the bones of giants remind us that nothing in this world is permanent except change itself.